Okay, let's start. One more time. Hello, everybody. Thank you that you are here, that you are find time to learn something new with us. It's our third domain-driven design webinar. Today's topic is not directly related to the domain-driven design, but it's a great tool to find bounded context through our application. You are muted, it's in purpose. I'm the moderator today. I'm Mariusz, CTO of Visuality. Write me on chat if there will be any problem with sound or if you need something. In the middle of the presentation, please write your question in the chat. At the end, I will aggregate them and we'll try to answer them. Today's agenda is very simple. Of course, the main point is Michał's presentation, from idea to implementation, a practical guide to event storming. Then there will be time for Q&A and answer. At the end, we can also unmute your microphone to be more freedom to ask questions. And at the end, there will be a short survey. We really want to know your opinion about the webinar and ask you for what would you like to learn from another one. Let's talk a bit about Michał. Michał is a senior Ruby on Rails engineer in Visuality. We have more than 8 years of commercial experience and more than 10 years of general programming experience. He is a speaker in various Ruby meetups. He also are skilled in DevOps. Okay, I will pass the mic to Michał. You can also welcome each other and good luck.
All right. Hello, everyone. So thank you, Mariusz, for such a warm welcome. And as Mariusz said, I am a Ruby engineer that works in Visuality as Ruby on Rails developer. But today, I'm excited to share my knowledge regarding event storming. So, as Mariusz said, if you have any questions during the presentation, please write them in the chat. And at the end of my talk, I will try to answer them. Let's get started. So what is event storming? Probably many of you already heard about it, and maybe even some of you already participated in event storming workshop. So you might know that it is a workshop technique that is used to visualize complex business processes. It was introduced by Alberto Brandolini, Italian software consultant, and now it's getting more and more popular among development teams. And there are 3 types of event storming. Big picture, that is used to explore and understand high-level business processes. Process level, that is a little bit more detailed. And usually it's focused on optimizing specific processes. And design level. This event storming is focused on solutions. On this level, we can employ various modeling techniques, such as domain models, bounded contexts, or aggregates. And the visible outcome of big picture event storming can look like this. The whole wall, the whole room, and all other available spaces covered in tons of sticky notes. But if you want, event storming can be also performed remotely. You can use one of the online platforms for collaboration and visualization, and the most popular one is Miro. So that's it. That's it when it comes to theory. Now we can go to the fun part of my presentation. Because event storming is a workshop technique, so there is no better way of learning it than doing it or seeing it in action. So let's do it. Let's imagine that we were asked to lead event storming session for startup company. The company already developed an application for renting scooters. They proved their business concept. They are, let's say, half a year on the market, and they have a first working version of their application. The company was successful. Customers are using it, so they travel through the city using scooters. And next year, it will be all about the expanse. There will be new features coming to the application. The company is going to new markets and they will be hiring new developers. So here we are going to lead a big picture event storming and a part of process level session. Who do we want to invite to this event storming? Usually we want to have people from different departments. So we gather people with different perspectives on the system. So in this case, we of course invite development team, but by the way, on big picture, it might happen that technical people are not required. But for our example, we invite developers. We can invite testers, people from DevOps, product owner, and ideally, we could also have one person from other departments, like marketing or customer support. Maybe even CTO has time to join us. But we should keep the size of group manageable. I would say that for big picture event storming, it's optimal to have 5 to 12 people in one room. And another important thing, we need to define what is the goal of the event storming session. It will provide a clear focus for our session. Then it will help to evaluate its success, and it will guide us when discussions become chaotic. So what is our goal? Let's say that our primary objective is to find the most critical pain point in the system. We know that there may be several existing problems in the application already, but we want to find the most specific area that is most impactful and that can be the greatest obstacle to expanding the app into new markets. So let's start. Let's start with basics. An event. An event describes a relevant, meaningful change in the system. Let's agree that it should be written in the past tense to reflect something that already happened. And we use orange sticky notes to represent events. When we introduce this first element of event storming to workshop participants, it's turn for participants to take an active role in the workshop. We ask all people gathered in the room to create events that describe business process that is occurring in the system. And usually the most confident person in the room or facilitator of the workshop creates the first one to demonstrate how it should look like. But when people see it in action, they start to create more and more events. And for now, the place where they put them on the board doesn't matter. More and more events will come to the board. And this phase of big picture event storming is called chaotic exploration. And you can tell that it's quite similar to brainstorming, because here we care about quantity, not quality. So the more events we have, the better. In this phase, I like to highlight 3 situations that can happen. So the first one, someone creates improper or not well-defined event. For example, an event that is not in the past tense, or an event that is not directly connected or relevant for the business process. When we see that happens, we can politely ask the person for more details about this event. Maybe it can be rephrased or clarified. Thanks to that, we will keep all events consistent and aligned with overall context. Another situation. We see that someone doesn't know what events to create. For example, and it's quite common during event storming sessions, we have an intern who joined development team, let's say 2 weeks ago. And this person doesn't have much knowledge about business processes yet. This is great, because for sure this person will learn a lot during the session. But for now, we can encourage such person to make educated guesses. Even if created events won't be 100% correct, maybe they will spark some conversations. Or maybe they identify some areas that are also unclear for other participants. And the third situation, the discussions. During event storming, it's natural for people to discuss and comment on events created by others. This is great, because exchanging the knowledge is the key part of the process. That's why we are here. However, we should keep in mind that event storming session has some structure. And the goal of the chaotic exploration phase is to reflect business processes by creating tons of events. We don't want to stop that process. So when we see that the discussion starts to go off topic or becomes too distracting, it's okay to politely pause it. We want to make sure that session stays focused and productive. But on the other hand, if the discussion covers something significant, we should somehow mark it. We should make sure that it won't be forgotten and we can revisit that later on. So for this purpose, we introduced a new element of event storming. Pink sticky notes called hotspots. They simply mark all the places that require further investigation or discussions or clarification. It's very helpful to write a question on pink sticky note, so we know what exactly is the problematic issue behind it. And as exploration progresses, we will see more and more events and more hotspots. Eventually, we will reach the point where everyone stares at the board and have no more ideas for events. Depending on the size of the business and the number of people in the room, chaotic exploration takes from 10 minutes to half an hour. And this is a good moment for the first break. So we can ask people to get some fresh air or make a coffee and prepare for the next phase, which will be much more demanding. Why? Because we need to clean up the mess that we just created. Our next goal is to organize and structure all the events. Our ultimate goal is to create a consistent narrative of business processes that happen in our company. We want to achieve that by placing the events on the horizontal timeline in the proper order. And as you can see, it's not an easy task. For this presentation, we can see only about 20-30 events. But for the real businesses, the number is much, much bigger, reaching hundreds of sticky notes. So how do we even start? There are few heuristics. We can try to find the first, let's call it starting event. So the event that kicks off the whole process, or simply is the first one chronologically. Another way is to find another type of events, so-called pivotal events. Those are the critical events with significant effect on the business flow. They have major consequences and they usually trigger other meaningful events. But for our example, let's say that we search for the first event that happens in the whole business flow. Let's imagine that we are going to a new market, so we can ask experts gathered in the room what should happen first. And we have an answer. They said that we have events connected to adding new scooters to our system. And this is the first thing that actually happens. And then we have another events connected to scooters configuration and to putting them on the streets in the city. But at the same time, someone in the room says that we have also client registration that can happen at the same time. So we can handle that by creating a second timeline, knowing that those two lanes are quite independent from each other. Of course, if it's true. But for our example, it is true. And it is a good practice to have the most meaningful timeline in the middle. So for our workshop, this is the timeline connected to scooters, to the life of the scooter. And as you can see, we have another events that describe the process of renting scooter. And when we talk about scooters, we have another type of events. Events that don't fit into the specific place in the timeline. For example, we just added to the board an event scooter location saved. And this event describes the fact that each scooter sends its GPS coordinates to our server every 5 or 10 seconds. So basically, it's happening all the time. We can all agree, for the purpose of our event storming session, that we will put this type of events at the very top of our board. But when this event would have some meaningful consequences, for example, resulting in another event, we can always copy it. Okay, going back to the main lane. So we gathered all the events that can happen during the scooter ride. We placed them vertically to emphasize the fact that each of them can optionally happen. Maybe the occurrence of some of them will result in invoking another event. And during ordering the events, we primarily want to focus on the main business process. Here we almost have it covered. You can see that we have another optional event, confirmation photo send, that happens after scooter is returned. From domain experts, we know that for some customers, we have this feature turned on, and for others, it's turned off. So we can reflect that by placing the event a little bit above. Sooner or later, we will come back to all those problematic places, pink sticky notes, hotspots. And sometimes the discussions around them can be concluded in 10 minutes, but sometimes it requires more time and effort. I can say from my experience that resolving issues around those pink sticky notes is one of the most challenging parts of event storming. Because as workshop facilitator, you need to be able not only to follow the discussions, and domain experts might talk about really complex stuff there, but most importantly, you will need to lead those discussions and try to conclude them with proper events. So the most needed skill here is asking good, insightful questions. And of course, experience. This is something you need to learn in practice. And even then, sometimes it might happen that the key person to resolve the discussion is missing. So in such situation, it's okay to leave the hotspot on the board. But ideally, we want to have all hotspots resolved, and that's what happened for our board. Another thing worth mentioning is the situation when we have the same event twice in different places. For example, here we have an event scooter reconfigured, and it happens at the very beginning of the process and after the scooter maintenance. So our job here is to understand the differences between those events. And maybe in some cases we can rephrase them to make sure that the difference is clearly visible to all participants. Okay, so time to take a short break. And let's reflect what value in terms of strategic domain-driven design event storming brings. Because during big picture session, we can see the emerging picture of the core problem domain. And possibly, we will also see emerging subdomains. However, due to the nature of big picture workshop, the events that we created have some fuzziness and lack of very detailed information. So most probably, we won't be able to draw precise boundaries between subdomains at this stage. Let's see it here. We are almost sure that the core domain will be connected with the process of riding a scooter, because this is the core of the business, and this is the real reason why our app even exists. But there are many subdomains, and maybe some of them will become more and more important, while others may eventually fade away. So for now, we can see subdomains connected to scooter maintenance, invoicing, making a reservation for a scooter, or user accounts. But let's go back to event storming. When we think that we have the main business process described, we can start looking for the holes in our narrative. We need to make sure that we identified all the key events that occur in the system. And there is a very useful technique called reverse narrative. We try to describe the whole process, but starting at the end and telling the story backwards. This allows us to view the events not only in terms of their consequences, but also from the perspective of prerequisites and requirements. And usually it results in adding more events to the board, usually the ones that are often too obvious to put at the first place. And when we have all events in place, we can finally add more elements to our board. And the next element is actors. They represent the different people or roles in the system that are responsible for triggering or participating in events. And remember that event storming notation is relative, so we can even use Nicolas Cage to represent it. But we can also stick with the boring yellow card, which is most common in event storming notation. And by adding actors to our diagram, we can create more complete picture of the events flow, because we will see who is involved at each step of the business process. By doing that, we can better understand the roles and responsibilities in our system. So here we have typical actors like admin, client, maintainer. Adding actors can also help us to identify potential bottlenecks. For example, when we see that multiple actors would try to trigger some events at the same time. Let's continue. Another card to make event storming board more complete is external system. They simply represent all the systems our application is interacting with. So typical external systems are email provider, payment gateway, some external API. And it might even happen that another part of our system can be described as external system for our purpose. For example, we might have a legacy application that we depend on, or simply another service or microservice. And by adding external systems, we can see potential places in our system that might break, and it won't be caused by us. So we have a structured version of the business flow in our system. Now we can ask someone in the room, for example, someone that had the least knowledge of the system at the beginning of the session, to describe the whole story out loud. Others will hear and validate, and we can still make some adjustments to the story. But when we are happy with that, we can finally try to achieve the goal of event storming session. Our goal was to find the most compelling place in the system. And at this point, probably it's already clear for workshop participants what is this place. Because this is the area or group of events that sparked lots of discussions, where we have confusions or uncertainties. So we can ask people to vote on the event. Or another way, we can ask the most important person in the room to point it. And here you can see that we have it figured out. In our example, people voted for the events connected to renting a scooter. And it makes sense. We hear from developers that the code there has no tests and was built in the rush. And changing it is always risky. On the other hand, we hear from customer support that there are many complaints from customers who try to rent scooters and they simply can't because the application crashes. And also CTO confirms that this is crucial because the application is going to new markets and eventually this problem becomes more and more important. So we have it. Typically, big picture takes the whole day, but I can imagine that in very complex systems, it could take up to 3 days. And is it really finished? From my experience, and also from what Brandolini describes in his book, having a dinner together after a finished workshop or having unofficial conversations during lunch breaks can also bring the real value. Because during informal talks, people feel more comfortable and they can have creative ideas and reflections on the business processes. But we can go to the next stage. Process level event storming. Imagine we meet the same team the next day. We already know what is the most painful area in the system, and now we want to explore it. We want to dig deeper to better understand the underlying problem. So let's start by introducing one more sticky note, a command. Commands describe the request of making a change in the process. Usually, they result in events. For example, we can have a command like complete an order or rent a scooter. But it's important to distinguish between invoking a command and handling a command. So someone can initiate the change request, but the system can refuse to handle it based on some certain conditions. So we can start with fundamentals. We had an event scooter rented, therefore we can create a command rent a scooter. We assign an actor, which is a client here, and we start thinking about other consequences of this command. Here, we have the first interesting thing. The consequence is also making this particular scooter unavailable for renting for others. If we know that many users had complaints about this process, maybe this is the place where something is not working correctly. Anyway, we can also add notes with the body of the comments. This helps in thinking about what knowledge has someone who invokes the comment, and also about possible results of the comment. We can see another interesting thing. We spot that some consequences of the comments needs to be processed immediately, while others can be slightly delayed. Saying it in engineering words, they can be moved to background processes. For example, here, we need to make sure that whenever the system positively answers the request of renting a scooter, this scooter needs to be removed from the list of available scooters. And this needs to happen right away. On the other hand, scooter rented is something that can happen a few seconds later, and it's not a problem for our system. But what does it really mean to rent a scooter? We quickly discovered that this event, scooter rented, is not enough. And this is a good sign. And actually, during process level event storming, whenever we have a command and then an event that sounds exactly the same, we should be suspicious, because it means that we didn't describe the process in a detailed enough way. So here, some more events appeared. And this is a good moment to introduce another essential element of event storming, the rule. Rules serve as conditions or business logic that must be satisfied for the process to proceed. And the typical flow involves invoking a command, checking against the rules, and then continuing if they were met. For our example, we see that we can add two very important rules. When someone wants to rent a scooter, we need to check if the client, person, user who wants to do that is eligible to do so. Then we also need to check if the scooter is available for renting. Here we see why it's helpful to list the content of the command. We can immediately validate if the command itself consists of all needed information. And maybe in our example system, this is the issue. Maybe the business rules checks are not correct, leading to many errors later on. Moving forward, let's explore another common scenario in process level event storming. We remove events that are not essential to the process. And while in big picture, we were focused on adding many events, here is the opposite. We shouldn't be afraid to remove some of them. By doing so, we can achieve a clear and more concise view of business processes, capturing its essence. Also, it's quite common that some events will be transitioned into rules. Of course, we just started with process level event storming. We want to see details of the whole process of renting a scooter, so we also need to add other commands. We can describe the process of returning a scooter after finished ride. We can describe the process of making a reservation for specific scooter. And probably during process level event storming, we should describe the whole process, including all events that can happen during scooter ride. But it's time to introduce the last element of event storming notation, read models. They are represented by green sticky notes, and these are simply information that is needed for the user to make some business decisions in our system. And usually read models are translated into retrieving and displaying the relevant data from database. And as you might expect, here, the main challenges are often connected to database query optimization and ensuring that the user receives fresh, up-to-date data. So we add read models to the board. As you can see, we have an emerging pattern here. User uses some data from read models to make business decisions, aka commands, that result in events if business rules were met. And to complete the business narrative, we can also add external systems. All right. That's it when it comes to process level. The biggest benefit of successful process level event storming is to achieve a clear landscape of the business problems that our system solves. In big picture, we answered the question why the system even exists. Here in process level, we try to find an answer on what the system is really doing. And finally, to find an answer on how exactly our system solves business problems, we can perform design level event storming. This workshop is quite different from previous two because it requires much more work from technical people, and very often only technical people take part in it. Design level is the most interesting to me and to developers usually, because here we try to model the architecture of the system, and we can finally start identifying bounded contexts, designing aggregates, and we can even write some pseudocode. Another difference from big picture and process level is that the previous two workshops were all about the problem space and business needs. And design level event storming shifts the focus towards designing proper solutions. So it's obvious that it's hard to make design level session without big picture and process level before. But design level event storming is a huge topic on its own, and maybe this is a good topic for my next presentation. So let's wrap up. No event storming presentation would be complete without this image. Brandolini calls it the image that explains everything. And this is true. It shows all the connections between elements in the systems. This is basically how 90% of businesses work. I recommend exploring this image if you want to start your journey with event storming. So during my presentation, we get to know event storming notation. Specifically, what all those colorful sticky notes mean and how we should use them. We've built the clear narrative of business processes, and we achieved the goal. We found problematic place, and for sure we had tons of discussions around it. Hopefully some of them leading towards working solutions. But you might say that this could be achieved without event storming. And I agree, that's true. But thanks to event storming, we have another benefits. We learned a lot about the system from different perspectives. We needed to learn and speak a common language about business processes. And finally, we not only know what is happening in the system, but we all understand it the same way. And to me, this is the biggest achievement of each event storming session, hard to replicate with another techniques. Of course, there are lots of materials about event storming, and I especially recommend the book by Alberto Brandolini and his talks on YouTube. That's it from my side. Thank you. Let me leave you with one of the most favorite quotes from Brandolini. And I'm waiting for your questions. Back to you, Mariusz.
Thank you very much, Michał. It was a great presentation. If there is any question in the chat, there is no. If you have a question, you can also raise your hand and we can mute you. To prove that event storming are working, I remember the time when we came to our client for the event storming session. We expanded the team. There was developers, there was product owner, designers, QA, and there was even deep dive into the code, how something is working, and at the end, the product owner said that it's wrong, and there was a lot of discussion. And we know the whole process of that really complex application at the end. After 1-2 days, basically, because the first day was a big driven storming, and the second one was process level, but also a lot of discussion around the problem itself. I remember that somebody said that he knows the project after 2 days more than he knows the business in his previous project after a year. So it could be really, really good, even if it looks trivial at the beginning. There is a question about the recording. Of course, there will be recordings. We'll send it to registered people. Probably I'll also post it on the social media. Do you have any question to Michał? Okay, if not, I will paste on the chat the survey. Wait a second. And if you have time, I can also I can say a few words, 2 minutes about the Visuality itself. Michał, could you? Oh, okay. There is questions, so you can answer it, Michał, and I will try to run the presentation about Visuality.
Yeah, so the question is, do you recommend any resources for learning how to host an event storming session? So, as I mentioned at the very beginning, event storming is a workshop technique. So you can get some knowledge from internet, you can read the book by Alberto Brandolini, but this is only half of the knowledge that you actually need to have. The most important here is to have practical skills, and you can gain them only by practicing. So I would recommend first to try to make a big picture event storming for yourself. For example, you work in some system and you can try to make make events, try to order them. Then when you have that, you can try to invite some people from your department and try to figure out this narrative together. But I would highly recommend not going big, rather in small steps. So perform 1 to 3 test event storming sessions, and then try it with the real client, but at the small scale. So maybe only big picture, or maybe even big picture, but with the small team. Because it's very often the case that we hear about event storming and it's like, whoa, it's great, I'd like to try it. And you try it, you lead the session, you organize that, even you invite people. And then it happens that the session is not successful and people have a feeling that they wasted time, you are discouraged to continue on that topic, and it's a failure, right? So I would recommend going with small steps, learning step by step, and practicing it on its own.
Okay, thank you, Michał. Okay, there is no other questions. I would like to say a few words about Visuality, because maybe you would like to work with us. Visuality is a software house from Poland. We are, of course, focused on Ruby and React.js. We have clients from around the world, from 3 continents. We have 16 years of experience and 25 professional on boards. It's mostly Ruby developers, but there are also front-end department and project management. We have diverse type of services. It's not only a development, but also software consulting, project management, and DevOps. I really like to highlight that we are not a software house who is creating startups and only startups. Of course, sometimes it's refreshing and it's really nice to write your application from scratch and to build it on your own with your rules. But in Visuality, we have difficult projects. We have a model which we are rewriting a big application, and it's with a lot of DDD principles. So we have our sandbox to train to learn it. We have also application with event sourcing based on event type project. We have application with microservices architecture. We have an application, we work with a client who have an application with AI-powered system. There was a lot of problems with database and consuming database, and we already fixed them. Despite the fact that we have hired 3 junior developers last year, we have still 8.5 average years of engineering experience. So we have a lot of people which you can learn from and which you can share knowledge with. We are a company oriented people. We are doing mentoring session. We are going to conferences this year. You can meet us on Wrocław RB in Poland, or you can see us on Euroco or Friendly RB. It's a new conference. I suggest to explore what will be there. We also create our own meetups in Warsaw, so we really like to share knowledge. Yes, we have our own startup, Poltrax. We have in the company 3 guys who are crazy by walking, and they are going to events to go 70+ kilometers through the mountains. They attended a lot of events and they found a niche that there is problems with tracking the competitors, and we created our own startups. And we thought that it will be, the first year will be only few events at the beginning, but it was the events was every weekend, and it's we are now expanding to other countries. We care about our company culture. There is we are transparent. I think we are constant feedback to people. We have our own activities in the company. For example, we are producing our own cider. We are meeting on the barbecues. We have our blog, please visit it. There is a lot of articles about DDD in Ruby on Rails, and there is also some articles about event storming and other articles mostly about Ruby. You can please sign into to newsletter if you want to get knowledge about new articles. We also train new Ruby adepts. We had our own Visuality Academy, and we hired 3 juniors after that academy, and we trained more. Thank you very much. If you have any question about the domain-driven design, about event storming, or about Visuality itself, you can write to me or Michał. I'll be happy to answer them. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time that you spent it with us.